What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Daily Dime. You know what it is. It's one of our favorite kinds of days. We've got football and we've got basketball. Hopefully we can just continue this hot streak on these days where we're able to combine NFL and NBA into singular plays. It has been wildly successful for us. Are you as excited as I am, Zach?
Yeah, I'm ready for this slate tonight. Obviously, on both of the sports we're going to talk about here today, NFL and NBA. I know you'll have more on the NFL stuff on the show later today, the NFL focus show with Two Gun and Prop. But excited to talk through what you've got here this morning. I've got a couple picks on the NBA side. I think it's going to be a very fun DFS slate tonight. We do have DraftKings lopping off those late games, but again, I'm fine with that if we want to do that on football days. But, you give us those big Tuesday, Wednesday slates, give us all the games. So I'm fine with that. But what I am legit shocked by here as we went live, Kristaps Porzingis will make his debut for the Celtics tonight. We'll break that down in more detail on the Fast Break podcast here early this afternoon. But man, I mean, there's no rush. But like the fact that they're getting Porzingis back before Thanksgiving. Yeah. I know they sent him down last week to Maine, but I still thought we were multiple weeks away. And this is just 14-3 Celtics getting Porzingis back. It's about to get scary.
It's going to get very scary. We don't need them to be any better than they already are. I imagine that it's almost going to just kind of muddy the waters for a little bit for Boston in terms of like what we do from a fantasy perspective and what we do from a props perspective. I'm definitely going to be a little bit slower to some of these Celtics props, just wanting to see what the rotations are going to look like, things of that nature. But why don't we jump right in?
No Derek White first quarter for you today. Then
honestly, if we went back to Derek White first quarter, we might get some death threats in the Discord. we need to stay away from that one for a little bit. It's a damn shame too, because I went back and looked. We're still a game over 50% on the Derek White first quarter prop on the season, but I think it's been 3 in a row that have lost, so people aren't happy with it. And remember, that's with some multipliers too, right? So the fact that we're still over 50% of them is pretty damn good. It shows why we've been going to it so much. It's just it started out crazy hot and obviously has cooled down. But yeah, why don't we jump into tonight's actual slate and start making some picks? I know you've got some that you really like in the NBA.
Yeah, I want to start with kind of one of the late night hammers, right? So you won't find this one on the main slate on DraftKings. It's on FanDuel, but of course we're starting with the props here, so everybody can get in on some DeMar DeRozan action here tonight for the Kings. And Kings taking on the Thunder. They're actually 4-point home underdogs here tonight, but DeRozan's points prop at 18.5. That I respect the matchup. I do. But that is just too low for me. DeMar DeRozan averages 22.1 points per game on the season. He's played 35-plus minutes in each of the 2 games since he's come back, right? Was out for a couple games. And there's no minutes restriction on him here, so we should expect full minutes. You take a look at what the FTN fantasy model is projecting here this morning. It's got him for 22.2, so just a smidge over that season average. And so then again, I mentioned the matchup, right? So Shea and Dort and Cason Wallace, and right, the list goes on. Alex Caruso. We could just list off basically the entire rotation and be like, it's not a plus matchup for many players, but going all the way back to DeMar's time in San Antonio, he's over this number in 5 straight and 6 of his last 7 matchups against OKC. Now, again, when you're getting back to DeRozan San Antonio days, you are also not seeing the same team, not at all, in terms of the quality of the Thunder as an opponent, as individual defensive matchups. But again, he has not struggled to beat this number in the past. The model loves him. I just think this one, again, stuck out to me right away this morning with a DeMar DeRozan points prop below 20. So I really like this one. And I think you could look at Fox in that same lineup at 24.5. The model really likes an over selection for Fox, but I'm not too hot on pairing them. And I prefer DeMar at this 18.5 number.
I think the best way to look at this is he went over 18.5 in 10 of his first 11 games this season.
Yeah.
And easily in almost all of them. I think he was at 20 or above every single time, and 21 in 9 of the first 11, if I recall correctly. Then he gets hurt, and now he has 2 games with 16 and 18 points. But as you said, the minutes have been back. So this to me just seems like a massive overcorrection to what he's done the last 2 games. I don't think it needs a correction at all. 18.5 is just way too low for him. So I'm with you. I think this is a really solid start. And then I will take us.
I was just going to say that to close it out on DeRozan, like the shooting efficiency hasn't been there in these 2 games since he's been back. So maybe is that because of the injury, the time off? Sure, but you've got 18 and 19 shot attempts in each of those games. He's only averaging 16.5, so the volume is there. If the efficiency comes back again, I think he could potentially soar over this number.
Yeah. Let's go to the NFL for my first pick. No surprise there. And it's the type of play that we have just crushed on all season, especially over the last month or so. Lamar Jackson over 14.5 yards for his longest rush is my favorite of the day. He's gone over in all but 2 of his games so far. The Chargers are a great matchup in 2 different ways. Number one, they have allowed the 4th most explosive rushes in the league. That's runs of 10 plus yards. You can find that in Stats Hub over on FTNFantasy.com. And secondly, they're also allowing the 4th most scramble yards on the season. So whether it's a designed run for Lamar, like he had 4 of them last week, I think, over this number, at least 3 of them, or it's because he's escaping and scrambling. I think Lamar has at least 1 chunk gain on the ground, and that's all we need here. So 14.5, just way too low for Lamar. To me, this seems like just like the DeRozan one is an overcorrection. This one is an overcorrection too. The idea that the Chargers are good against the run. They're not good against the run. They just haven't faced many rushes because they've been winning a lot of games, controlling a lot of games. But when teams are running, and when teams are in the game, they're able to break off some chunks against them, whether scrambling or running. And this is one of those games where it's not likely that Baltimore is going to be way behind and chasing, and they're not going to be able to run the ball. So 14.5 longest rush, I think, is a fantastic start.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I think the theory here behind not just this Lamar play, but what you're going to talk about in this backfield as well makes a lot of sense to me. And I know you're fine pairing these guys, but I also think this is setting up for one of these slates where we can take our 4 or 5 picks here from the stream and just rotate through these 3 pick plays on Underdog here today. And that's something I've already started to do this morning. So I see Hami in here say, I swear to all that is holy, if you go Derek White first quarter, I'm going to Bart Simpson meme you. Yeah, not today. And again, like the Celtics, shout out to the Celtics for the Porzingis news, because Derek White not even on the board right now. So we can't on the stream. And I know we just got a message too. Hopefully we can get an ownership run here in about 10 or 15 minutes when we get to the DFS portion. But if you want to keep going on NFL here, feel free. But I've got more NBA props to talk about too.
Yeah, why don't we stay here for NFL just because it's a connected play. So let's go to Derrick Henry. His longest rush over 17.5 yards. Remember what I just talked about for Lamar. The Chargers are allowing chunk gains. The 4th highest explosive rush rate. Derrick Henry has been over this number in all but 2 games, just like Lamar Jackson. So these numbers are set well below what they should be for what they have done on the season. And they're implying that this matchup with the Chargers is a really bad one. It's not. It's actually a solid one for these guys. So these numbers are just simply too low. And you were kind of wondering about how the correlation works on these longest rushes. Like if we had Lamar Jackson over on rushing yards, maybe we wouldn't want Derrick Henry over rushing yards, especially if we're saying, hey, Lamar's dropping back and he's scrambling a bunch. Well, that means he's not handing the ball off to Henry. But number one, we have the design runs for Lamar the way we don't have with many other quarterbacks in the league. But then it's also, think about the way teams have to defend the threat of Lamar keeping the ball and running half the time where he's actually handing off to Derrick Henry. And what happens when one of these guys breaks off a chunk, right? Let's say he hands it to Henry. Henry goes around the right side, gains 20 yards, and we hit. The next time Lamar shows that, the defense is going to be a little bit quicker to try and cut off Henry, right? They don't want that exact same thing happening. Now they're half a step late when Lamar keeps it and goes out the other direction. Or maybe it's Lamar kept it and breaks off a chunk gain. And now the next time he actually hands it to Henry, they're a little bit hesitant. They're half a step late to realize, oh, crap, they actually gave it to Derek this time. So these actually work quite well together, much in the same way that we have done like explosive rushes with the longest reception for other guys, knowing that when one of these 2 things happens, the defense has to react in such a way that makes the other one more likely to happen. So I really like this pairing. And I think it's actually probably positively correlated, not inversely correlated. But even if there's no correlation between them, to me, they're both such a high probability of happening that I have no problem whatsoever pairing them together.
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, that was the first thing I asked you, and then that explanation, it makes total sense to me. And as somebody who needs big games in multiple season-long leagues from each of those guys, I would love to see this come through here tonight. So I like that pairing. And I see, look, the chat still, Albert, I'm with you, man. You know the Derek White first quarter points is going to hit tonight. I'm sure it will. It won't be the last time we go. We're not going to just ignore it the rest of the year, but it's on the back burner here today. All right, let's jump back to the NBA. I see you got it pulled up here. Nikola Jokic taking on the Knicks here tonight. This one is in Denver, and we've got the Nuggets as 4-point home favorites. Got a big Q tag on Karl Anthony Towns, and to be honest, Alex, I don't know if I want him in or out because I think that's a pretty good matchup for a guy like Jokic. But this line, it doesn't make much sense to me, and I think my biggest concern is actually a potential blowout in favor of the Nuggets if Towns misses this one, because Jokic, I know a lot has been made here on the Fast Break podcast. Basically, whoever I can tell is Jokic, at least last week, was leading the league in rebounds and assists and averaging 30-plus points per game. It's just massive right now. So 30.3 points per game on the season. He is over this number, 27.5 points in 8 of his 12 games. And the 4 that he's missed, I think there's some important context. One was a 26-point blowout of the Utah Jazz, where he came up with 27 points in just 29 minutes. So again, we don't expect this one to blow out here tonight. The other 3 were losses to, or against rather, I'm not sure about the result, but against Minnesota once, so against Gobert, right? And you respect that front court with Naz Reid coming off the bench as well, and Oklahoma City twice. So again, I think it's quality teams and quality front courts where he has come up just short. Again, 27, 26, and 23 are 3 of those 4. So it's not like he's having he's had one game where he's had less than 20 points here. Again, just a 4-point spread. We know how much he's doing for this team. And whether it's Towns or Jericho Sims or Ariel Hukporty, who is guarding the best player in the world tonight? It's some combination of those 3. And I don't think any of them have much of a shot here at slowing down Jokic. So to me, the biggest threat to this not going over, like I mentioned, is the blowout, or if Jokic is just able to pick apart this defense and kind of relaxes on the scoring there. But that's not what he's been able to do with this Nuggets team this year. He has to pull the weight in all of the statistical categories, and I think that continues here tonight. The model agrees. Model has him for 30.3 points here tonight. So I love this over on his points at 27.5.
And not only that, but in terms of his ability to just pick apart the Knicks, the Knicks aren't the type of team that you would expect to do that, right? They're a better team defense than they are an individual matchup for him as far as scoring. So yeah, I'm with you there. And the other thing I'll say is when you first brought up this play to me and mentioned how many points he's averaging, my thought was, well, this early in the season, maybe we don't want to just look at average points because someone might have scored 51 and now all of a sudden their average is way above their median outcome. But to your point, he's gone over an 8 of 12. So that's not the case here with Nikola Jokic. So I'm with you here on this one. So now we have 4, as you mentioned, you can run 4 different 3-pick plays with this, or we can see if we can find 2 more. I will have some other NFL picks. I haven't been able to find any on the Charger side that I liked yet, but I will certainly have those by the time we get to the NFL show at 5:30 Eastern here on the FTN YouTube channel or the FTN Fantasy Twitter account. You'll be able to find it either place. Let's see if we have some blocks and steals props up yet here on Underdog. We do not. They're a little bit slow today, it looks like. That's a bummer.
Of course.
Anything else that you have seen?
Yeah, I'm poking around a couple others that, the tool is kind of leading me towards. I've been eyeballing the Shai Gilgeous-Alexander points. It's set at 30.5, so I think a little bit more appropriate than some of the lines we have seen over the last couple weeks with no Chet Holmgren, but Isaiah Hartenstein back, played 28.5 minutes off the bench in his debut. I would expect him to get the start here tonight against the Kings and Domas Sabonis. So I think we should expect the usage for SGA to come down a little bit from that 40 range where it has been with no true center over the last season and some change. But the tool really likes the over here. It's got him projected for right around 33.3 points. Again, this is a 4-point spread on the road. So that's one that I could potentially drop into the chat later. Also, maybe a little bit of correlation here. But I'm hesitant because of the cat Q tag that is outstanding at this moment. The tool here, the FTN model, really likes the unders on both OG Anunoby and McCall Bridges in terms of their points props. But again, if Towns is ruled out, then I would not feel nearly as confident about that. And if you look at OG, like you have it on the screen there, he's at 17.5 on underdog. The tool has him for about 15.8. And he's at 18.5 over on Prize Picks. So if you were going to take the shot on OG's unders here and take that suggestion from the Prize Picks tool here at FTN, I would only play this on Prize Picks right now and get that extra point. So again, that's something I'm eyeing, but we got to get more of a feel throughout the day. And these are some, right? Okay, look, so 16.5. Got him projected for 13.9, 1.12x. Again, I like that if Towns plays. I really do. But if he's out, then somebody, just the projections for everybody remaining in this starting group are going to come up.
100%. And the other thing is, like, one other potential reason why you might like the under is blowout. But then if they do get blown out because there's no Towns, that's going to hurt our over on Jokic. So also keep that one in mind there. So yeah, this isn't something I want to do just yet, but the fact that it's 1.12x makes me very intrigued. I'll also mention, remember, he came into the season with a very broken, ugly shot. He's shooting 30.4% from three in the season, 28.6% this month. So he certainly has not figured out what he's doing with his shooting form, and that's cost him, at least in the last 3 games, he's gone under this. Also lost some minutes down the stretch against Utah. So we wouldn't expect that to happen if there's no Towns for sure, but that's also something to keep in mind. If they start to sour on him at all in the rotations because of the lack of shooting, he's, 3 of 16 from 3 in the last 3 games. That would also be a reason for us to jump on these unders. So yeah, it's a really good find. It's just not something that pairs great with the Jokic over while we still have some Towns uncertainty.
Yeah. When Weisberg's in here, and good to see Mike, he said Tatum's point prop is kind of juicy. He thinks Tatum or Jaylen Brown might sit here on the 3rd game in 4 nights. We did get Celtics news above and beyond the Porzingis surprise there. Luke Cornett is doubtful with the hamstring here, and then Al Horford is doubtful with an illness, which I think is probably more just rest because he sat out with the illness, came back, played yesterday, and now he's doubtful with the illness. I think it's just back-to-back for the Celtics. We know Al Horford doesn't really play those. So I don't know, man. The Celtics are still 10.5-point home favorites here. You would expect KP to be very, very limited here. Like more than 24 minutes would shock me. I think we probably get more like 18 here right off the rip, unless I've missed a report, in the last 20 minutes, specifically about that, but still double-digit home favorites here. I think with Horford and Cornett out here, we probably see both of those guys play. At least the double-digit spread indicates that to me, because as much as, and I know there's still probably a gulf between these two teams, but the Clippers are, I think the Clippers are good, man. Like go look at their schedule. Go look at the teams they've lost to, the teams they've beat. They've had a very tough schedule, and they're sitting here tied for 4th in the West. Even with no Norman Powell, they've won their last 3 games, and not against the dregs of the league. So I actually think both of those guys play. And we need to update. I know that, like, I'm hesitant on the Celtics stuff here, Mike, because we don't have Porzingis in the projections yet. That's going to come here once we shut down the stream. So something I'll keep my eye on. Tatum, for what it's worth, 26.5. I do agree that is juicy on the surface.
Yeah. We have a general UD strategy question here.
Oops, sorry.
What? Oh. Wait a minute. What's going on here?
My hands are up.
That was fun. I couldn't figure out what was happening. General UD strategy question here. I know you guys like the 3 or 6 picks, but what about 5 picks? You're getting a better payout on a 5 standard versus a flex bet. So for anyone who is a subscriber over at FTN Fantasy, in the Pick'em Discord's channel, you can find pinned a large explanation of why we like the 3 and the 6 pick plays the most. There are 2 ways to evaluate what you're doing. The first is, what is the minimum win percentage on individual picks that you need to be profitable on that type of play? So for example, 3 pick plays, you need to be 55%. That's fairly straightforward, fairly easy to do. At least we have a long track record now of being well above 55%. The 4 picks, you then go up to 56.2%. If you do insure it, it actually goes right back to 55.0%. So maybe we don't do enough 4 pick insured ones, but it's just so much easier to just do a 3 pick there. You're basically doing the same thing. You know that it's not like you're getting a bigger payout if you go to the insured. So you have to then go 4 for 4 instead of 3 for 3 for the same payout. Yeah. 5 picks go to 54.9%. So you're gaining a 1/10 of a percentage point, but having to now get 2 more picks correct. If you insure it, it goes down to 54.7% from 55%. So again, it's like technically you're getting a slightly better number on each one, but now you have to find 2 additional picks that you really like, which is why we still prefer the 3 pick. When you go to a 6 pick play, now you get an actually significant drop. Now you only have to go 53.8%. So that's the math behind what we like, why we do this. The second aspect, a little bit more advanced, is looking at expected value for each play. And there you also see the expected value really soars for the 6 pick play. So I guess like the best answer to why we don't do 5 pick plays is, if you're at a 5 pick play, you might as well go to 6 pick, right? And same idea with, like, we never, ever, ever do a 2 pick play, because if you have a 2 pick play, you can literally take both sides of another play and make them 2 3 pick plays, and you're getting the identical thing. So as long as you feel like you have something that's better than 50.0%, you're better off adding a third to a 2 pick play. So a little bit of math just behind all of this, but another way to look at it is just say, okay, you know what? I'm just going to commit. I'm only doing 3 pick and 6 pick plays on underdog. You're going to be pretty set there. Every now and then I do an 8 pick just because, number one, they're fun. And number two, it's also like just the expected value. This is getting a little bit technical, but we mentioned 53.8% is what you need for a 6 pick play. If you go up to an 8 pick, it goes back up to 54.7%, which is why we don't do a ton of these. But if each pick that you have is a very good pick, it has an edge, let's say like every single one was 60%, your expected value is actually going to be higher on that 8 pick play than the 6 pick play. Just like on sports books, right? If you are a winning player on a sports book, a parlay will typically enhance your return. Whereas if you're a losing player on a sports book, a parlay is just going to drain your account quickly. Yeah. Same idea here on underdog. If each pick has an edge, the 8 pick is going to have a higher expected value, even though it's harder to find an edge on those 8 pick plays. So a little bit technical there, but it's a good question. And just a reminder to people, if you didn't totally follow that conversation, it's totally fine. The Discord channel will help you. It's broken down in a much simpler, easier to read way. So good reminder there.
Check those pins. As you're talking, I pulled it up very quickly, just following along with the message that you had there about 6-8 months ago. So I thought that was a good description. Hopefully that helps Navari there. I know Navari's been very active in our Pick'em Games channel, and I think misread the Goddard pick last night and ended up just greening out all of his
hilarious. Yeah. I also thought that one was kind of dead because Kyron Williams was at like 46 rushing yards on the first drive. Yeah. We had under 72.5, and then he just was totally shut down in the second half. So that honestly, like, that's kind of what if you saw the play, we had the Kyron Williams under on rushing yards, and we had Dallas Goedert over on first half receiving yards. You can see the story I was trying to tell there, right? Like, the Eagles end up with a big lead, so they're not throwing in the second half, and Los Angeles isn't running in the second half. We got both of those things to happen. It's just that Goddard didn't get there in the first half, and he actually had a really open opportunity down the right for a long touchdown. It would have gotten called back anyway based on an illegal shift, but it felt like we were right there. So definitely another one where, it was a loss, but we know we were on the right side of it, which I can't say about all the picks I made yesterday. Like I hadn't felt as strong about anything all season as I felt about Tyreek Hill, and that was just a total swing and a miss. They clearly liked their matchup with Jalen Waddle a lot more. Yeah. And if Tyreek had the game that Waddle had, we were in takedown city all over the FTN Discord. So big bummer there, but what can you do?
Yeah. And so I see Derek here, and shout out to Derek, right? Derek's my buddy who found FTN. Has been in we've been in a fantasy league together for I think like a decade at this point, and so it's nice to see Derek coming in here almost every day over the last week, and he actually just put me on this prop because I think that is a great call out by you, Derek. This game environment with Atlanta and Dallas tonight, I think the line being in favor of the home team here, which is the Hawks, certainly indicates that there's no early return for Luka Doncic here tonight from the absence that has been expected over the last couple of games. 237 implied total. That is the highest on this slate here on Monday. And you look at the projections here at FTN Fantasy, and we've got Jalen Johnson projected for over 35 PRA. So I have already, as we've been sitting here talking, been putting this into 3-pick entries on Underdog. So it's a great shout out by Derek there. Appreciate that little insight there. And Derek, the high scorer in our league this week, now back to 500. Nice. He's chasing the playoffs, Alex. So we got the little the real life crossover here on the Daily Dime again.
Love that. I'm also checking. I want to see. Yeah, Luka. So one of the reasons to really like this, Luka's pace is 14th on this Dallas team, 100.7. Most of the other guys on the team averaging somewhere like 102, 103, 105. So when he's out, we should expect the pace to increase, making it a great game environment for Jalen Johnson. So I'll go ahead and add that one to the list, which means we've got to now find a sixth one for a 6-pick play. Also worth remembering, we have that one that we like, the under on Mikal Bridges, but we need no Town. So one thing you could do right now is you could run a bunch of 3-pick plays where maybe you're using Jalen Johnson and the under on Mikal Bridges, but no longer using Jokic because now you're fearing the blowout in case Town sits. So lots of options right now, but it'd be nice if we could get a 6th pick in here.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's
do another refresh, see if we've got some stocks options. Which also, like, let's also remember, we don't always have to come away from the show with a 6 pick specifically. We can say, hey, we've got the foundation. We know that stocks props are going to be up in an hour or so, and we'll add some 6 picks then.
So I don't think this is a force by any means now, because I actually want to go back to what Mike Weisberg brought up with Jason Tatum's points prop. And one thing that I didn't notice here, Mike, when you brought that up, he's 26.5 on Prize Picks. 25.5 here now reposted on Underdog. Again, we don't have Porzingis projected in here tonight, but I still think 25.5, even with Porzingis in, like, that feels a little bit low. The pace here against the Clippers is going to slow down a touch.
Yeah. Which sometimes works in his favor.
And you look at what Tatum did last year, right? He's averaging 27 points a game with Porzingis in the mix there. So, again, I don't feel like this is like a windmill slam, but I do think it looks, we've got him projected for over 27 points here. Again, no Porzingis in there, but I'm not sure how much Porzingis in a limited amount of time is really going to ding him.
He's been over in 11 of 17 games.
I mean, again, like I said, I really respect what the Clippers are doing on the defensive end, especially on the wing here with DJJ and Chris Dunn, right? And Amir Coffey is certainly holding his own out there in a larger role with no Norm Powell. See if we can find something else that we like. Like, these Underdogs not posting attempts props here. I know we have some love for some of the attempts props in the tool here. Let me pull the tool back up because I had just loaded up. We did get our ownership update for the DFS side of things. Jalen Suggs now listed questionable. What was he before? Was he doubtful? Oh, he wasn't on the injury report. Yeah, I think he's going to miss. Okay, they just grayed out Orlando, so we can't rush and get anything in here. Jalen Suggs going out. Like, again, they have plenty of capable backcourt defenders and KCP and Gary Harris, and Anthony Black is not terrible in that regard. But I know the Tool likes the LaMelo overs here. His points are set at 31.5, though. And in a game with this type of pace that you'll see in an Orlando game, right? 213 for a Charlotte game in terms of an implied total. I'm hesitant there as well, but he definitely is not hurt by Suggs now looking like he might miss with that hamstring. He was forced out of the game in the first half the other night and did not return.
I think I've got one for us.
Okay.
Josh Palmer over 18.5 for his longest reception. He's been over this in 6 of 9 games. There's a chance that Ladd McConkey will miss tonight. Maybe he's just banged up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Baltimore, if I recall correctly, they are allowing the second most explosive passing yards in the league. So let me double check that where we're at now with them.
Okay.
They have allowed 24 deep completions on the season, second most only behind Jacksonville. They've allowed 755 deep receiving yards. That's second only behind Jacksonville. A lot of that has come from wide receiver ones. A lot of it has come solely from Jamar Chase. But they are also a plus 17% DVOA adjusted fantasy points against matchup for wide receiver twos, which is what we are categorizing him. So I think this Josh Palmer number is quite good.
Yeah, I like that. I'm sitting here eyeing, and like those who know me and have been at FTN for a while, we'll get rid of Derek White today. Let's bring Daniel Gafford back into our lives here. Okay.
Right.
So, this I think could correlate with the Jalen Johnson prop if this game stays close. Again, Gafford, now the backup center to Derek Lively, but still getting a relatively even split there. I think you should expect a little bit slightly less than 24 minutes for Gafford because Kleber is in the mix there, right? They can certainly, Coach Kidd can certainly change up that rotation at the drop of a hat, but Gafford, his line at underdog 9.5, right? You're getting that 0.92x for the higher than. Prize Picks, he's 10.5, but our projection has him for 14.6, and I don't think that's outlandish at all here. Let me double check the minutes, but again, with the pace of this matchup, and you know how high usage Daniel Gafford can be around the basket, I think maybe you lose a little bit with Luka being out in terms of that screen and roll game, but you still got Kyrie Irving. He's pretty good at that as well. Got him in for
double-digit points in 10 consecutive games, including games where he played 19, 18, 18, 20, 21 minutes. So
I'm looking at that projection, Alex. Click the arrows. We can only buy him up to 12.5, but 1.56x multiplier. And again, we have him projected for over 14 points here this morning.
Yeah.
I think that's like, if we're looking to take a swing right here with one of these picks tonight and get that multiplier up on some of these entries, I think that's the one for me right now.
Yeah, this is a great call. I don't know exactly what I'm going to play as of yet. Zach, why don't we actually chat offline and come up with exactly what our favorite combinations are? Maybe we hold off on Jokic for now and actually get that Towns news, and then we know whether we want to pair him with Bridges or not. So lots we can do here, but yeah, this Gafford ladder, very interesting. The 12.5 number. Let me see here. So over
12.4 on the year. Again, he did start 11 games, and we had some games without Lively. But he's averaging 20.9 minutes per game. So it's not like he's I think he's played over 23.5 minutes twice. Right. So this is a guy, again, like I said, scores a lot. He's over 12.5 in 8 of his 17 appearances, but 11 in 2 other games, 10 in 2 other games. And the pace tonight, I think plays into his favor.
It's also worth looking a little bit deeper into how being on the floor without Luka affects him, because it certainly our projection suggests that we're baking in some kind of benefit there. Let's make sure there actually is a benefit. So some stuff that we want to research about this one, but on the surface, it seems pretty fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. So, I mean, it's 20.1% usage on the season. You take Luka off, and he goes up to 23.9. So that is not, and that is not an insignificant jump there in his usage, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it also seems, at least on a surface level, like his points per minute have gone up as part of the second unit compared to the first, which is probably just that same effect, right? He's probably getting fewer minutes playing alongside of both Luka and Kyrie, which is going to help almost anybody get some shots of their own. All right, should we jump over to the DFS side of things?
Yeah, let's do that. Taking a look at the first run of the GPP scores here this morning. Can take off the Daniel Gafford search there. Again, I'm not surprised by this when we were talking about LaMelo's points projection in the model, that he's got the highest GPP score on DraftKings here this morning. Again, with Jalen Suggs looking like he may sit out here tonight. I'm not completely discounting, like I mentioned, the Orlando backcourt and just their team defense as a whole. But the model loves it here. 13% projected own. You don't have to play a ton to get over the field. So again, LaMelo is not a spend up that I look at on the surface tonight and say, I'm going to slam him in here against the Magic. But the GPP scores have been so good to start the year. Like, I know, right? Marshall Gershon plays his first NBA lineup of the season last week and gets second in a contest, just basically filling his lineup with the top GPP scores on the night. So I also note Jalen Johnson right there, 8,300. So I think he's somebody at right around 10% ownership that we should have a lot of interest in. I think that Atlanta-Dallas game as a whole. I'll shout out Derek again, because Derek, I think late last week, maybe on Friday, called out PJ Washington, and PJ Washington goes for like 40 DK points in that one. So looks like Dallas and Atlanta is a game that we're going to look to target here if we're basing our roster construction, or we're including the GPP scores in terms of how we're looking at roster construction. Grant Williams.
I will also point out, you mentioned Marshall's DFS success. He's up almost 100 units on the NBA season, just laddering points bets as well. So we should keep an eye out for what he's doing on his ladders and try and do the exact same thing with some of our underdog slips, because you can just add those points ladders and maybe feast on that success as well. But yeah, it's a great call out. And last time he laddered both LaMelo and Brandon Miller. Curious to see if he does it again, because here they are once again at the top of the GPP scores. So and then also Dyson Daniels still here. So a lot of Atlanta, some Dallas, a lot of Charlotte. It seems like another nice night for just kind of really honing in on a couple game environments as the GPP scores have kind of told us to do all season, and it's worked really, really well.
Yeah, I see Anthony in here, the Brewmaster. I haven't seen him in a while, so good to see you in here, Anthony. Just again with that Charlotte team.
Real quick, it's not good to see Anthony. I don't need this tape in the middle of November. What are we doing? What are we doing?
Oh, so Charlotte front court. No Grant Williams, no Mark Williams, and no Nick Richards, right? And I think the latter two working their way back here, but not going to return tonight. So Moussa Diabate, Taj freaking Gibson are basically the only two bigs there in Charlotte. So I think the Charlotte front court is going to provide some value options. But again, how much do we want to go to Moussa Diabate? I'll be watching his ownership, currently at 19% here this morning. But if we don't get some of the value that we think could open up throughout the day, that number might go up at sub 5K on DraftKings. He's going to be an option in play, I think, pretty much regardless of how the news breaks. Like I mentioned earlier, we are still waiting on 7 different injury reports, I believe, with the Pacers, Raptors, Mavericks, Clippers, Celtics, Nets, and Kings. I guess we have the Celtics now at this point. But there's still a lot of news to come out here throughout the day. We've got big questionable tags, Towns and Suggs, and there's a number of others. Cade Cunningham is doubtful here for the Pistons. Much better matchup for them here, right? No Cade against the Magic last time out. It was tough to attack from a DFS perspective, but now getting the Raptors tonight, I do think that Jaden Ivey is going to look a lot more intriguing on this slate than he did on the last slate with no Cade, but I think Beasley and Tim Hardaway on the wings there might be our best way to attack this Detroit team with no Cade. You can see Malik Beasley there, 5,400 guard and forward eligible, picking up right around 15% ownership. up there, top 10 in the GPP scores here this morning. Jokic, 12K, fourth in GPP scores, 20% owned, well worth it for me. And again, Towns in or Towns out. I love Jokic tonight, even at that 12K price tag. I think we have enough value to fit him in pretty comfortably. And the last thing I'll mention here in terms of injury situations that we kind of have some feel on here this morning is the Portland Trailblazers. No Donovan Clingan, doubtful DeAndre Ayton. So Time Lord, right, should get his 24 to 25 minutes, but it might be Duop Reith night, and you see him there projected for 22 minutes, third in the GPP scores. 1% ownership right now. I think we need to look more into that, and maybe if Duop Reith is going to play a smaller role than we are expecting here on our first run this morning.
It's also possible that others will kind of end up seeing it the way we're currently projecting it, in which case his ownership would skyrocket. So one of those two is likely to change for sure.
Yeah, and we've got Scoot questionable. I think Jeremy Grant questionable as well here. So we could get an even more shorthanded Portland team against Memphis. And Memphis, John Morant's at shoot around, so maybe making his return tonight on the Memphis side of things.
Yeah. All right, guys, that will do it. Obviously, lots of news still that we need before we can really dive even further into this slate. So we'll take note of how the GPP scores change throughout the day as ownership changes. We will catch you in the Discord. Reminder, we will be back live at 5:30 for NFL. Catch you then. Goodbye.